出嚟。咁所以我哋就話，如果我哋有機會拍嘅話，希望就撇除咗呢個慣性。
It's about the atmosphere. That's the direction we are going for. We did away with green lighting or night settings, but instead we magnified the atmosphere. The ghost scenes and the way ghosts appear is not just for a few shocking seconds.
What you can see? 其實咧，佢哋有時唔想俾你見到嘅，慢慢就會慣嘅。
An already crowded Hong Kong, populated with ghosts from the afterlife, resonated with local audiences.
The Eye could be, for a Hong Kong audience, what something like Blair Witch Project is to North Americans who live in more rural environments and know how scary the woods are. Because Hong Kongers live in crowded urban environments, they don't know how scary the woods are. With the Eye, a regular Hong Konger, having these types of things happen to them could well be more scary. Its very normalcy makes it scary.
我諗佢可能放錯張相啊！呢個邊個嚟㗎？
呢個咪你嚟嘅咯？你仲未認到自己個樣咩？
The Eye is much more than a film about seeing the dead. Like many Asian horror films, the dead look to the living to resolve their issues. Moon discovers that not only does she have the eye of the dead woman, but that her spirit is possessing her. She must uncover the woman's identity and find out how she died.
我知你一直都想我嚟呢度，而家我嚟咗，你有咩想同我講？
Only then can Moon rid herself of possession and set the soul of the ghost to rest. In Hong Kong, people are constantly reminded of their obligations to the dead. Because of this, The Eye spoke to a wide audience.
This connection to ancestors, especially in Chinese cultures, right? These are things that we don't have the same way in the West to the same degree. So a greater sense of coexisting with the spiritual world in that level. There are all these films that are having to do with haunting, especially as a kind of playing out of that kind of drama, of people who lived in the past, are present, and need to be responded to.
The Eye was a box office hit throughout Asia and also popular in the West. The successful formula of Asian horror is winning audiences well beyond its own local borders.
Urban Asians, whether they're living in Tokyo, Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, Hong Kong, or Bangkok, may have more to do with each other than people living in the countrysides anywhere in Asia. So they may share some of the same fears, the same concerns. And as such, they're going to want to watch the same types of horror movies.
Hollywood is looking to films like The Eye to reproduce success in the West. It's now one in a long line of Asian horror movies to be bought up in recent years. But when Hollywood gets its claws on Asian horror, just what will get lost in translation? The rights to the Asian horror films Jelangkung from Indonesia, Shutter from Thailand, and The Eye from Hong Kong have all been snapped up by Hollywood.
I think Hollywood is keen on remaking Asian horror films because, frankly, Hollywood is getting low in the idea bank. I mean, they've remade everything from, you know, the Dukes of Hazzard to George of the Jungle. What's next?
Recycle is the latest offering from the Pang brothers of Hong Kong. The film tells the story of a young horror writer whose discarded ideas come back to haunt her. The film is a parable of the way the West is now looking to recycle successful Asian horror for their own audiences.
When these films are remade for the U.S., there is the danger that some of the resonance in the plot, which may have worked in the original context, may be lost. How do you make sure that the film still works in the new context? Because there are certain cultural meanings that really make the film work in the original context.
The adaptation has to be really, really good because it's very local. That's the problem. I mean, if you have the Ouija board using the same story, it just wouldn't work.
I believe Thai people, especially the young, receive too much Western culture. We receive so much of it that we forget our own culture, our own roots. My intention in making Nang Nak was to dig up our roots for everyone to see.
If you pick a culturally specific story, you know, how would that translate in the world audiences? And I think there are many ways. I'll say there are many, many ways of finding a way of telling the story. But the stories are so compelling that I think years from now somebody will be telling a story about Dracula. Somebody will be telling a story about Nang Nak. A good story always has something so unique. You know, it's always culturally specific but universally affecting.
The deep well of superstitions, legends, and folk tales in Asian culture will continue to fuel the imagination of horror filmmakers. And as it does, the rest of the world will continue to look to Asian horror films for new ideas and new ways to scare their audiences.
接下来，它不仅引导了这个全球贸易的时代，因它所引发的种种重大变革，仍深深影响着今日的运河工程。开通苏伊士就在《先锋任务》接着播出。